Welcome back to the Football Dive podcast. It's a brand new Premier League season, and I've got both Myles and Dave here with me to probably over-exaggerate everything we've seen and blow it out of proportion, like we tend to do on the first day. A few twists and turns, but generally the script was followed by most teams. Myles, first of all, welcome back. How are you?
Oh, I was hoping to be better after the opening weekend than I am, but generally speaking, not too bad.
Yeah, we'll dwell on Villa's plight later on, no doubt. Dave, dare I ask how you're feeling this weekend? How have you been?
Carried on from where we left off, haven't we?
Pretty much. It feels like copy and paste, doesn't it? Groundhog Day all over again. But again, yeah, we'll delve all into United's shortcomings as well. But I think we'll start in a place none of us really want to, and that's with Liverpool, if that's okay with you guys. So Fulham 2, Liverpool 2. Cracking game and a great return to the Premier League for Fulham. And I worried about Fulham, I really did. I worried about Aleksander Mitrovic as well and whether he could make the step up. All those questions answered emphatically in this game. And a Liverpool comeback with Darwin Nunez thrown in for good measure. Myles, pretty good game all in all to start talking, isn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. To be honest, it was not the result I think anyone would have expected. Fulham answered a lot of critics early in the season. We know Marco Silva is a decent coach, and he's clearly developed some really good players there. And their tactics were just spot on in this game. And the shortcomings of Liverpool were exactly the ones that we potentially could have foreseen at the start of the season. They had a midfielder go off injured. They lack depth in midfield. Trent Alexander-Arnold can't defend. And those things were what cost them in this game. So massive credit to Fulham, particularly Mitrovic and his performance. I wonder if this might spark something in the transfer market for Liverpool to try and make sure they don't lose ground on City, because this should be a wake-up call for them.
When you say Trent Alexander-Arnold can't defend, it's not their only undoing, is it? You've slated their midfield a few times, Liverpool. How do you think they held up this time around?
I think, obviously, when Thiago goes off injured, that costs them. Henderson still, to me, he just doesn't look ready for the season yet, and he might grow into the season, but he's another year older. They need depth there. It's so obvious that they need depth there. I said it in our predictions as well. I really think that Liverpool need to develop in that area, and maybe Trent moving there would be an answer. And I think in this game, Fulham absolutely dominated in that area. And one person they couldn't keep up with was former Manchester United player Andreas Pereira. All right, We've seen enough of him to know his form is sporadic at best, and he may not maintain us into the next game, but he was excellent in this game, and Liverpool didn't have an answer for it. Their lack of depth, and once again, Trent not being able to defend at the back post really cost them.
It's strange to see Liverpool start the season 2-0 when I think in this game in particular, you'd almost written it off in your head as being 3 points in the bag. But Dave, that wasn't to be the case. It was a good comeback, to be fair. Darwin Nunez adds a really interesting option from the bench, doesn't he? So what do you make of, first of all, Mitrovic and Fulham's fight? Because they set up really well, didn't they? But then also Liverpool's comeback. What does that say about them this season?
We're kind of all eyes have been on Mitrovic, I think, coming into this season, seeing if he can actually do it in the Premier League on the back of that phenomenal season that he had last year. He's had the best start possible, really, with 2 goals. And Myles mentioned Pereira there. I think another player who performed really well was Panini in that midfield. And Liverpool just really couldn't cope with their tenacity in midfield. And it was real eye-opener and such a great game to kick off the Saturday with Fulham hit the post just before Liverpool hit that equaliser to make it 1-1. And, if they'd scored that second goal, they could have taken the game away from them. I think Liverpool can be quite, consider them quite fortunate, really, to come away from the game with anything, because I thought Fulham was much the better team.
That's saying quite a bit, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people have written Fulham off already as early season relegation candidates. That might still prove to be the case. And as I said at the start, it's easy to blow these kind of first games out of proportion, isn't it? And look at them into too much detail. So we won't overanalyze the meaning of it for both teams. But is it too early to talk about title race yet? Is it too early to think, well, that's 2 points drop for Liverpool, do you think, Myles?
It's not too early, because that is the kind of numbers that these two teams post, where any points dropped are significant in the race. Normally, City are the slow starters, and they tend to build momentum through the season. We've seen that over the last 2 years. So Liverpool will have wanted to set the benchmark here, and particularly at a newly promoted side, this should have been a pretty favourable fixture. I think there's signs there that will be encouraging for Liverpool, of course. You talked about Nunez's impact off the bench. I doubt he'll be on the bench next week. He'll start their next game. They obviously were trying to bed him in and see what his fitness was like, but he looked so sharp. I thought it was really interesting that his goal, he took it incredibly well. He lifts the ball. And if you noticed, 2 minutes earlier, exactly the same chance comes in for him. Salah gets on down that wing, puts the ball across the 6-yard box, and he tries that exact flick along the ground, and the keeper saves it. He does it again, and he manages to lift it over the keeper. And that, to me, the intelligence and the movement and that connection on only his third, fourth game for Liverpool, that's a brilliant sign. So you can't say Liverpool are written off. You also can't say that Fulham are safe from this. They're such a hard team to call. When I did my predictions, I actually think Fulham have got enough to stay up in some areas, but the worry that I had was what they have at the back, and that cost them in this game. They didn't have any centre-backs, really. It looks like they're signing Issa Diop from West Ham now to strengthen in that area, so that will be something. If they can solidify that back line, then they definitely will stay in the Premier League. Mitrovic is not the player that he was 2 years ago. Marco Silva has improved him massively, and he can bully defenders, as he showed in this game. He made Van Dijk look very average, and that is a tall ask. That's a big, big compliment to Mitrovic. And that ball at the back post that Trent Alexander-Arnold just didn't know how to deal with, he will not be the only defender that falls victim to that with Mitrovic this season. So Fulham showed some real signs of promise, but they also showed that they really need to sort their back line out, because they shouldn't have let Liverpool back in the game.
I think Darwin Nunez is one of these players that I think is criticised because he looks like Andy Carroll in some ways. I feel like that's criticism straight away. I think it's going to be the same player. But yeah, I'm so stunned and kind of really pleasantly surprised by his intelligence and his movement. And another player I think I'm equally, not stunned necessarily, but just still in awe to see him close up in the Premier League is Erling Haaland. I thought he was just unplayable. And the way he moved for City's second goal especially, but also to win the penalty was hugely intelligent. And to make City winning 2-0 was a great start for them and a great start for him. It's like a monkey off his back after the Community Shield, wasn't it, Dave? I thought that kind of boded really kind of ominously for the rest of the Premier League.
Yeah, I think critics are very quick to jump on players' backs on, especially in terms of when they've come in for quite a big transfer fee. But I don't think there was any doubt in Haaland really coming in. We all knew that he'd inevitably get goals in the end, and to one decisive finish, and obviously that penalty definitely was a perfect opportunity for him to get off the mark. I'm sure it probably did lift a little bit of pressure for him, and it was relatively comfortable for them in the end. Really, we've seen West Ham get results against City last season. They had that 2-2 draw, I think, in the end, wasn't it? But yeah, a really encouraging start for them, and I can imagine that their fans are excited about what's to come now, and obviously a clean sheet.
Yeah, well, City, we said traditionally slow starters, Myles, but flying out of the traps this time around against pretty decent West Ham team as well. What did you make of the performance?
I think it was really interesting because having Haaland there, I thought it might almost unsettle their forward line and mean that they were only aiming for Haaland and not really know how to connect with that. Whereas actually, what it has done is just add another dimension. It hasn't stopped them from playing like Man City. They play like Man City, but now with another avenue of movement. And that's fantastic. I said earlier that I think that this season will be a massive breakthrough for Grealish at City because he's got someone to provide for. And when you see Haaland's movement, in this game, it was De Bruyne that capitalised on that and Gundogan for the first pass. And you really saw that killer instinct. And that's something that they did lack at times last season. And definitely something that will help them go further this year, particularly in the Champions League. He looked outstanding. And all he needed were 2 moments. I think in the first half, I think he only touched the ball about 14 times or something like that. And yet he'd still got his goal. And that's what Haaland will give this team. An added dimension and something else for them to focus on when they go forward. I thought it was fantastic. And he clearly set such a high standard for himself. I'm sure we've all laughed at his post-match interview where he talked about how he wasn't good enough, let's say, because there was a moment and you saw it and you saw the frustration in him when Gundogan gets to the byline and cut the ball back. Fantastic ball. Haaland didn't follow it. He stayed on the edge of the box and he looked so angry at himself, but also a bit shattered. So if this is him on the first day of the season when he's not quite match fit and fully integrated into that City setup, imagine what we're going to see in 5-6 weeks.
Yeah. He's a physical presence, and I think the kind of turn of speed he showed was incredible. I've not really seen somebody as physical as him possess that much pace, and I think you can see him darting into channels, you can see him darting into space, and he reads it so well. And I think it will make City a lot more a director team, which is weird for them. They build up so much patience in their play, and they've now got to suddenly get just past the halfway line and go, where's Haaland? And look for him straight away. And they could do that. And you like you say, they've got the players like Grealish who have been sort of conditioned by Pep Guardiola to be patient and get the ball into the box. But now they can actually go, do you know what? He's made a run. I'm just going to play through. And I think that will be the difference for City this season. We'll have fewer possession stats for them to rave about and just a lot more kind of direct goals. I mean, correct me if you think I'm wrong.
Yeah, I do. I'll be totally honest. I don't think we will see City do that. I think if anyone's going to learn to be patient, it's going to be Haaland, where he probably will make 6 or 7 of those runs in a game where they won't look for him. And that'll be really frustrating for someone with as much character as he has. But there will be a moment like there was in this game where De Bruyne will look up and go, actually, this is my best option. If you remember at the end of last season when Grealish talked about how he never knows when the right moment to take a player on and then when the right moment to play in Man City's system is, that's what Haaland needs to learn. When's the right moment for me to go, just give me the ball, and when's the best moment for me to settle into Man City's system? And I think we'll actually see him adapt before we see Man City adapt. And that's okay. It gives them the opportunity to have the outlet. And you saw it in this game where every now and again, they could put a ball in any metre of space in that final third and he would reach it before a West Ham defender would. That's a great outlet to have. But we didn't see it happen 8 times in the game. Probably only saw it happen 3 times. And he scored from 2 of them.
It's weird. He could have had a hat-trick, couldn't he, as well, really?
Yeah.
The amount of near chances he had and half chances that he's probably going to kick himself for, really, for not taking more advantage of. It's testament to him and his competitiveness that he has. And yeah, Dave, what did you make of Haaland's presence in City's game, and how do you think this looks for their prospects going forward? I mean, it wasn't a fully fit Haaland, was it really, either? He even admitted that, but looked pretty impressive.
No, and again, it's going to take time for obviously the players at City and Haaland to get used to each other. As you know, as we've said the last couple of weeks, it's going to be a work in progress. But obviously, the encouraging thing is, he's already off the mark, and he's only going to get more opportunities the more they play together, the better they understand each other's games. And like you mentioned there, what Myles says, there's other players like, for instance, Grealish, who on the back of last season, who would have probably hoped for a better first season. Then you imagine he'll be looking to kick on as well. So it's encouraging time for City and scary times for the rest of the league if they're only going to further improve from here. And I'm not sure. It looks like they're potentially maybe finishing the transfer window. They might be looking for another fullback potentially. Obviously, with what happened with Cucurella going to Chelsea, it looked like he was going to go to City first. So
they want Sergio Gomez from Anderlecht, who's a good young left back who will play a good backup to Cancelo. And I wonder if his ceiling of potential has just got even higher because he now might have the opportunity to be a fullback in a Pep Guardiola team. That could be a great signing, actually. Someone that apparently Villa were looking at in January, so I know a little bit about him. He looked really frightening. So, I don't think Man City would be that bothered about Cucurella if it was 63 million for him and they can get Gomez for about 25.
It's interesting that they took their fullbacks in for this game, didn't they? Played them in the midfield and packed the midfield completely. Really stretched West Ham. Well, it didn't stretch West Ham. It made them play compact, and that didn't really work out for them at all. So fair play for the tactical switch there. It really supported the way Pep wanted to play in this particular game. But just a word on West Ham, if you can, Myles. Scamacca came on. Looked decent, but what did you make of them? They'll be disappointed to not really make a dent in City, won't they?
Yeah, they didn't really get started in this game. It's such a horrible opening day fixture to be playing Man City, if we're totally honest. So it's hard to read a lot into West Ham's performance. There were moments on the ball where Declan Rice looked like the Declan Rice of last season. He looked really assured. But then there were moments off the ball where he didn't really track the runners the way that we got used to him playing last season. And then, of course, Scamacca isn't quite ready to start a game yet, but came on, looked sharp. He had one good header at goal where he was offside, but you at least seen him trying to get in behind that defender. And when you are playing a team like Man City, West Ham have got the forwards to hold the ball up, try and take the chances that they get late on in the game and release players like Bowen by kind of looking to utilise the pace of the wider players while they keep the ball in the centre. So I think they'll do fine this year. I can't see them challenging the Big Six, but it depends what a good season is for West Ham now. They should be looking at the Conference League. After the run they had in the Europa League last year and how much that galvanised the fans, they've gone down a tier, but it's still a European competition, and you've seen what it did for Roma in terms of how it might kick a team on. So I think that's got to be West Ham's first aim this season.
Yeah.
And if they do a little bit more business in the window, I think that they could achieve something there instead.
Yeah, I agree. I think we said last time around last season, that West Ham were just a few players short of a squad that was deep enough really to challenge in all competitions. But I think they've got to kind of pick the one they want to prioritise, and I think that might be a cup at this rate because there's so much competition in the Premier League, isn't there?
Yeah.
But even so, I'm going to have to move across to the red side of Manchester now, Dave. And wow, the Erik ten Hag era started exactly as the Ralph Rangnick era finished, which was with a really miserable performance, wasn't it? Losing to Brighton 2-1, could have been more. What are your takeaways from this game, Dave? And I mean, how do you think Erik ten Hag is going to be processing this result going forward?
It's telling us a few things that we already know and we have known for a number of years. The midfield isn't good enough. It's not big enough for, too long. And it's kind of a broken record now, really. It's worrying that the defence still, it seems like they've just, only been playing together a few weeks. Fair enough. Obviously, you got Alexander Martinez, who, to be fair, I don't think was at fault for either of the goals. He was obviously a very new player. But you've got, 3 of the players in that back 4 who have been fixturing quite a while. We seem to be making the same mistakes over and over, and it's really worrying that it's just happening continuously. And the midfield, the amount of gaps in our midfield, throughout a game, we're just so easy to play against. And it's actually, I know Gary Neville obviously mentioned that we're the easiest team to play in the league, and that says it all, really. I actually think that's probably one of the worst midfield pairings in the league. And you're playing United, McTominay and Fred. And, Roy Keane said it at half time, they aren't good enough for Man United. And it's, we've known it for the last couple of years that they're not, and that's been the case. And it's almost like Ten Hag's come in and we're kind of hoping that he'll be able to work these miracles and get them to play, get that extra 15-20% out of them. But it's not looking good, is it?
Well, who are you blaming then, Dave, if that's the case?
The board, the owners, it's the same. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to keep going on about it because it riles you up even more thinking about it and how frustrating it is because there's not an ending. It's it's like we're going round and round in circles and it's the same arguments and frustrations every single week. And I don't want to keep coming on this podcast and speaking about the same things, moaning about the same frustrations, and because that's all it ever seems to be.
I think with the midfield as well, I know.
But the scary thing, really, is that our best player was probably Christian Eriksen. I mean, he's a proven quality player. Don't get me wrong, but the fact that some of our players who've been there for a number of years now couldn't stand up and kind of make a statement in that team and stand up and make a difference is another worry. Bruno Fernandes has been under par for a long time.
Yeah. Space here for McTominay. McAllister reacts late, and Fernandes sweeps it over.
I think one thing Ten Hag did get wrong was playing Christian Eriksen in that false nine.
So weird.
I just thought everyone, if that was going to happen, I think everyone anticipated that Bruno would be in the false nine position and they'd drop Eriksen a bit deeper, because once Eriksen did drop deeper in that second half, we looked far better. It
was so much better.
We weren't by no means, perfect. We weren't great still, but we looked more threatening. There was, as soon as Ronaldo came on, there was a system in place. We looked like we could potentially create something without being, more
Ten Hag system as well. Think about, he's had Sebastian Haller at Ajax last year performing to the levels that he was as a focal number 9. I cannot understand the idea of trying to start the season with a false number 9. I understand that Martial was injured and that he didn't feel like Ronaldo was ready to start the game, but surely you just move Rashford to the centre and play Elanga. That was the most obvious answer. How United have got to a point where Dave says he's frustrated talking about this repeatedly, and I completely understand. I'm actually looking forward to dissecting this because there's so many obvious problems that as a neutral, it was really clear to identify. So take any bias about the board out of it. What I would say is the fact that United were willing to start the season with Fred and McTominay in centre midfield again is shocking. And that does boil down to really poor business. I've said from day one, I do not think they'll get Frenkie de Jong and that they'll waste the entire transfer window trying to get Frenkie de Jong and end up with Fred and McTominay. That's exactly what happened. Yeah. And actually, as Dave says, when Eriksen was allowed to drop deeper, he looked to make things happen from midfield, just as he did at Brentford last year, just as are his strengths right now. So Ten Hag picked to play one of his actual new midfielders out of position and completely nullify anything that he would be able to do in the first half. That was a bad decision. When you do have the squad, not of the best quality necessarily, to cater to your system a lot more. Elanga showed last season what he was capable of. Why didn't he start the game? That's what I couldn't work out. And Alessandro Martinez, again, I would have put him in midfield for this game. If you didn't have the starting lineup that you wanted, play Varane at the back. Because Martinez, you say Davey wasn't at fault for either of the goals. I thought he was at fault for a few other things. He definitely gave away a penalty that I don't know how it wasn't given. And in the first 15 seconds, him and Dalot kind of got confused and looked like they could have conceded. And immediately they were off to the wrong start. The momentum was against them from the second that lineup came out. As soon as you saw Fred and McTominay in that midfield, Brighton would have gone, brilliant, we've got this. We've got nothing to worry about up front because Eriksen is not going to be running in behind our defenders, which is actually probably the best way of getting at Brighton. They haven't got the paciest centre-backs. You want to put balls through the channels and get behind their defenders. You couldn't do that in this game. And it was the wrong system picked. And I don't know whether that's Ten Hag being naive and not knowing the league yet, not knowing his squad yet, not having people fit, or the failings of the board to not give him the adequate resources. Because you are not going to get Frenkie de Jong. And apparently the backup now that they're finally looking at is Adrian Rabiot and Marko Arnautovic. You've got a disrupted dressing room that are leaking things every 5 seconds, and your answer to fix it and make it more harmonious is to bring in Marko Arnautovic and Adrian Rabiot.
It's ridiculous.
How either of you deal with it?
It's like an Igalo situation all over again, that kind of signing. We signed Igalo a few seasons back. No good.
Igalo's a nice guy, though. And Igalo wasn't there to lead your line or be someone. He was there as cover, as an experienced pro, a professional player. I'm not getting that from Arnautovic. How on earth are him and Cristiano Ronaldo going to get on in the dressing room? And then you go, not sure that's enough. Tell you what, we'll bring Rabiot in, who's known for retiring from France at 23 because he didn't get picked for a squad and threw his toys out the pram. Then negotiating a massive contract with Juventus to get out of PSG, and now he's unsettled there. So you go, we'll have him instead. It's someone's got to have a plan. Someone has, surely.
There isn't a plan. That's the thing. Obviously, there was no clear backup to the De Jong potentially that not coming off, as we can see now. And it's just a mess. What came out a few weeks ago about Richard Arnold getting Alex Ferguson and Brian Robson in for advice on, I'm sorry, but it's like we're going, we're in the twilight zone and we're seeing the same mistake made over and over.
Yeah,
we need we clearly need a director of football, a proper director of football. And it won't ever happen with these owners in charge.
I haven't heard that one before.
Right, sticking to the game, Dave, because we could get too big a picture here with United, couldn't we? If you take away two of the team's best players, how do Brighton still produce a performance like that? Because we need to give them some praise as well. They've lost Cucurella, they've lost Bissouma, two integral parts of the team, and you wouldn't even know they weren't there. They played pretty well for all United's flaws. So, Myles, I'll go to you. Brighton look okay, don't they? They look a decently coached team. Actually, this is the biggest difference you could see between the two.
That's it. And that's not to say that Ten Hag's not a good coach, but Potter has had a lot more time with this squad. So even with losing those two vital players, Brighton's strategy and their organisation means that they're already starting to replace them with Caicedo. He looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Danny Welbeck looked like a man reborn in this game. I listened to an interview with him earlier, actually. He talked about how this is the first full pre-season he's had in years, and it really showed. He looks so up for it, which he always is against United, because I feel like he still kind of feels that he has a point to prove there, and he proved it. He might not have got a goal, but he was so tenacious. He had both of United's fullbacks at varying times pushed back, and that was really good for him in terms of nullifying that system. Trossard looked great as well on the left-hand side. I thought he's starting to look like the player that Brighton were really hoping he would be. And of course, Pascal Gross loves playing Man United. I think he's got 6 goals against them now. Yeah. And he was just in the right place at the right time for both of them. And the fact that he was in that right place isn't a coincidence. That's very clearly part of Potter's philosophy of being able to occupy the right spaces at the right time, understand the dynamics with the team. And actually, they've not disrupted that team with too many incomings.
No.
And they've dealt with the outgoings really smoothly. And now Potter has got money. What could he do with Brighton and a bit of money? I think that's such an interesting thought, because he looks like probably one of the top 4, maybe 5 coaches in the league right now, and he's at Brighton. So I'm really interested to see what their ceiling is this year, because I still think their squad is too short to really challenge for anything like Europe across the whole season. But if you give Potter the money that they brought in, I wonder what he could do with it, because they looked fantastic again.
Yeah, fair comment. We've said he's the only real next candidate for the England job. I know that's looking ahead, and Brighton fans won't like me saying that, but he's the outstanding candidate, really, isn't he? So, yeah, fair play to Brighton. We're going to move on because we've got a lot of football to talk through. Just a few highlights to kind of mention. First of all, Tottenham beating Southampton 4-1. We kind of expected that kind of result. Southampton looked like they were always going to struggle, and Spurs were fantastic. I think we all predicted that'd be the case. Newcastle beating newcomers Forest 2-0. Bruno Guimaraes looked fantastic. He's an outside bet for player of the season for me. I think he's really, really solid. Leeds winning 2-1 against Wolves as well. I think Leeds might do okay. I like their new signings, and we said that in the pre-season talk, didn't we? They look like good signings for them. One I'm going to land on to get your opinion on is Bournemouth 2, Villa 0. And I know you don't want to zoom in on it too much, but we've got to talk about these newly promoted teams, and Fulham have done well. Bournemouth did pretty well. I didn't think Scott Parker was that good a coach, but they were set up really well. And Villa struggled. How did Villa struggle, Myles? On paper, they've got such a great squad. What did Gerrard do wrong?
A lot. How long you got?
The floor's yours, mate. Go for it.
So, Bournemouth did set up well, but not as well as we made them look. I think Villa's tactics were just so backwards. Gerrard has done so much wrong this week, I'll be totally honest. The selection for this game was completely wrong. I mean, leaving Tyrone Mings out is bizarre, and he gets a lot of stick from some Villa fans. And all of a sudden this week, he's become the best player Villa have ever had, if you judge Villa Twitter. The balance of whether he should be in the lineup or not is a hard one, but to me, it's obvious based on his numbers. He's Villa's best defender. Now, Diego Carlos is a fantastic centre-back and will definitely become great for Villa. But right now, when you look at the evidence, Villa's win percentage without Tyrone Mings over the last 2 years, I think, is 10%. And if you look at the numbers he posted last year, he was Villa's best defender in terms of aerial duels, tackles, blocks, everything. He's a top percentile. He's so influential in that Villa team, and such a leader. And his communication helps that system so much. And we missed him massively. And we conceded 2 silly goals. Then when you look at going forward, he's put in a forward 3 of Leon Bailey, Philippe Coutinho, and Danny Ings. A very good forward 3. You may not be a Villa fan, anyone watching. The first thing you would say is the strength of those players are Bailey is really quick. Danny Ings, if you give him the ball at his feet, is a lethal finisher. And Coutinho, with the ball at his feet, can make magic happen. We put 31 crosses into the box this weekend for that forward line.
Yeah.
And Bournemouth just dealt with it all day. They had these big towering centre-backs that were just able to just knock everything away. It was completely pointless. And I watched it for the first half, feeling so infuriated, and thought, at halftime, Gerrard's going to go mental. Every time Coutinho has touched the ball, he's lost it. We keep trying to lump these balls into Danny Ings, and he's not won one of them. He'll change something. And he brought Buendia on eventually. The fact he didn't start him in the first place is bizarre, but we'll move on from that. And then nothing changed. We were just crossing balls in. You can look at that Villa team and think they were missing their best centre-back. He was on the bench. They were missing probably their best creative player in Buendia. He was on the bench. And they didn't play Ollie Watkins. Gerrard has wound me right up this week, I'll be totally honest. And if you look at his stats, he's now got a worse record at Villa than Gary Neville had at Valencia. He has the same win percentage, but has lost more games. Gone under the radar, but he ended the season very poorly. I don't think he's had a good pre-season. We're seeing the Gerrard that we saw at Rangers, where his comments in the press have wound me up. The way he's talked about Tyrone Mings is awful to me. He said he needs to look at himself and work out what his next goals are and who he is as a player. No, he doesn't. Tyrone Mings is an excellent centre-back and has done way more for Villa than Gerrard has done in his short time there, and will do, in my opinion. He's a fantastic leader in that team.
A very gracious response to taking the captaincy away from him as well in social media. I thought handled himself brilliantly there.
He always does. Mings is excellent off the pitch as well. He got a lot of stick, Mings, early in his career as being a bit violent and maybe not the best character because of a few incidents on the pitch. At the moment, he is in the middle of setting up a foundation in Ghana to help support the Ghana Lions and all the Villa fans that are out there. He's also setting up academies in Birmingham. He's a massive part of the community. And along with that, has been Villa's best defender for the last 4 years. And Gerrard has come in and gone, well, I want my captain. The comments he made about why he's changed the captaincy, I didn't like. He's also then left him out of the starting 11. It feels like it's to prove a point. You've got Morgan Sanson not in the matchday squad posting on Instagram, by the way, I'm 100% fit and readily available, with a laughing face just before kickoff. So he's clearly wound him up as well. He's asked questions about Coutinho's form and he's ignored the question. And he's talked about the reason we lost this game was we didn't have enough quality. Yes, we do. We've got far more quality than Bournemouth. No disrespect to Bournemouth, but they're a newly promoted side that have signed 3 players that have never played in the Premier League, except Ryan Fredericks has, who didn't play in this game. And we've got a side that we're saying should be competing for Europe. And Gerrard's response is there's not enough quality. No, you just set them up wrong. That's it.
I thought not playing Ollie Watkins was a strange one for me.
Stupid.
Yeah. Strange decisions everywhere. I mean, I'm not even going to begin to pick apart why Gerrard's being so, I don't know, he's quite angry at the minute with his squad, and I don't know why that is. Can you put your finger on it? And what's the feeling of Villa fans, Myles?
That's him. He was like this at Rangers. When he first took over at Rangers, every post-match press conference was him throwing a different player under the bus. And he's trying to be more diplomatic about it these days. And he said, oh, yeah, it's on me, but there wasn't enough quality in the final third. Yeah, it is on me, but we didn't put good enough quality crosses in. No, he really wound me up this week. And looking at his record, if I saw on Sky Sports headline pop up as we're recording this, Gerrard removed from his position at Villa, I would not shed a single tear. I miss Dean Smith massively. I was
totally about to say, bring back Dean Smith at this rate by the sounds of it.
There's already Villa fans all over Twitter going, can we get Pochettino? I don't think Pochettino would come to Villa, but if Gerrard left today, I wouldn't be upset about it. And I always want to back the manager. I always do. When you look at his record, you can't justify it. And the board have backed him to a degree by bringing in the players that he would want. And he's done very well in the transfer market, but it's not translating on the pitch, and that's not good enough. If you gave a quality manager, if you gave Graham Potter this squad, Villa would be in the top 6 this season. I genuinely believe that. But I think we'll be looking at mid-table now, which is so frustrating. I don't think Gerrard will last long. I'll be totally honest, looking at that. Even it seems harsh to react to an opening weekend like that, but it's 26 games now, I think, and the record speaks for itself.
I'm astonished that you've had more of a rant than Dave about your club. That's a first, I think. And it shows how upset you are, though. That's the thing. Not the club, but the way the club is being managed at the moment.
Yeah. I think that the board have been excellent. I think that the way they've done their transfer business this summer has been fantastic, as it has been for years. Since we had the takeover, our club is run fantastically well. And I understand why they're trying to give Gerrard time, but he's handled it very poorly at the moment. And look, he could get 4 wins in a row now, and I'll go, all right, fair enough, he's sorted it out. But I'd be really surprised if that happened. We definitely need more work in the market. The talk is we're looking at Ross Barkley again, which It doesn't inspire me. We were being linked with Wijnaldum. He's now gone to Roma. We've been linked with Depay. I can't see us pulling that one off. If I was Depay, I'd look at Gerrard's record and go, as phenomenal as you are as a player, I don't want to join this right now.
I think he's spent enough, don't you? I think Gerrard's had the money he needed. It's up to him.
We've not spent anything. If you look at our net spend this summer, I think we've spent 2 million. Something like that. It's actually very low. Our wages have been high, but because we just sold Chukwuemeka for 20 million, and obviously we sold Matt Target for about 17 million. We've not spent very much money, so there should be more money there. Actually,
right?
I don't know. I'd be surprised.
Well, an odd situation at Villa. I honestly didn't expect them and that situation to be like it is. But we move on. Hopefully next week we'll have more positive things to talk about from both channels. But
we're playing Everton, so it should be fine.
Yeah, well, I was going to move on to those results next. So Everton started their season with a 1-0 loss to Chelsea. Arsenal beat Crystal Palace in their first game. I think another one to mention before we wrap up, Dave, is just Leicester 2-2 against Brentford. What were your thoughts on Leicester's performance? They're the only team in the top flight, and the whole team, and the whole of Europe, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken, in the top 5 leagues, to not have signed anybody. They've let the captain go in Kasper Schmeichel. Are you concerned about them, or what did you make of their performance?
I think the only trend really that seems to be, followed on from last season is them taking the lead and, a 2-0 lead at that, and conceding some silly goals, which is, something we've spoken about for a good time now. That needs to be resolved. I know obviously it's the first game of the season. Obviously we're not Leicester fans, but I can imagine it's quite frustrating for Leicester fans to see that happening yet again. Not just being frustrated for the fact that they've not signed anyone, but I can imagine that they probably will. It's looking to me like Fofana will probably eventually go to Chelsea. There's a lot of talk apparently that Chelsea are prepared to pay up to £85 million, which is ridiculous.
Mad.
Especially on the back of obviously him coming back from a really big injury as well. He still needs a bit of time for me, another year of playing football before he probably considers another year. But if they sell him, I can see Leicester going to the market potentially strengthening again. They'll definitely need probably a couple more defenders in there. It was good to see Vardy in there. Obviously, we thought, last season we did speak about it looked like it could be his last season as a starter, really. I'm getting to that age that he's at now. So it was good to see him in there and obviously making an impact. But I think they'll be really disappointed not to seal all 3 points, especially being 2-0.
I think it's sad to see Schmeichel not there. He's such a club legend. I don't think Danny Ward is going to be a permanent number one. He can't be. He's a decent backup keeper, but he's not a first choice for a team with aspirations like Leicester. But you kind of get the feeling that, they need a big sale like they have done over the last few years, and they make a lot of money from it. Fofana might be that guy by the sounds of it. But I don't doubt the scouting team have probably got a few players in line as soon as that happens, and maybe we'll see like a domino effect from then on. Myles, your word on Leicester quickly?
I'm really worried about them, to be totally honest, because I don't think Fofana will be the only one out the door. Newcastle are sniffing around both Barnes and Maddison. And I think if you're a player like James Maddison or Harvey Barnes and you've got aspirations of playing at the top level because they're that kind of quality, getting into the England squad, I don't think I would want to be necessarily associated with this Leicester team, particularly if they aren't going to strengthen in the window. You want to be competing. So Leicester could make big money, but if you lose Fofana, Maddison, Tielemans and Harvey Barnes, that Leicester team is a championship team at best. It's not good enough as a squad. And I think Ricardo Pereira's just picked up another 6-month injury as well. So their depth is just getting taken away slowly. And the fact that they've been so quiet in the market, I've not even heard rumours of players linked with Leicester. No. Not even just that they're not doing business, but there's not even people linked. Lookman's just gone and joined Atalanta, so they're not even bringing him back. It's just, I don't really know what's going on with Leicester. I'll be honest, my prediction now, Brendan Rodgers will be gone by Christmas because he won't want to be there. They'll lose Fofana, Tielemans and Maddison. I think Barnes will stay. And I think Leicester could be 15th, 16th come Christmas and really panicking.
Wow. I think a successful window for Leicester, by the sounds of it, then, are just keeping as many of the players as they can. I think that's the aim now, I think.
One really quick point on Brentford, though, as well, and
Yeah.
they won't like me saying this at all. One thing I'm really surprised by in this window, when so many teams are looking to move towards number 9s, how much money would it take to get Ivan Toney from Brentford? I don't think it would be as much as maybe his value is right now.
No.
Honestly, if Villa went to Brentford now and said, we'll give you 20 million from Danny Ings for Ivan Toney, I think both teams would take that.
Yeah.
40 million for Ivan Toney, I think Brentford would take it. And I think he would improve anyone outside the top 5 or 6 teams. United could do with Ivan Toney.
I'd take him over on Arnautovic, that's for sure.
I'm not even. I think he's a very, very quality forward, and put in a good team, I think he'd do really, really well. I'm really surprised he's still there, and they're getting Damsgaard as well, which is a great signing.
Yeah, Brentford. I mean, good resilience for them to get back into the game, and De Silva to score his goal after what he's been through, and a great goal as well was nice to see. So yeah, fair play to him. On that note, actually, Myles, to wrap up, what is your goal of the week? Is it De Silva, or have you got something else in mind?
De Silva's goal was excellent. It wasn't the only good goal that we saw this weekend, but the best of the bunch to me, it's got to be Fabian Schär.
Fabian Schär. He can hit them. Oh, he can hit them.
A player that we probably didn't expect to start this weekend because we thought it would be Sven Botman in there, but almost a carbon copy of a previous goal. That was an absolute thunderbolt. A brilliant hit from him. That's goal of the week for me.
Brilliant. And dare I ask, who's your hero and villain to wrap up this first game week of the Premier League season?
Hero, Aleksander Mitrovic. People have been questioning him and saying, can he do it in the Premier League? And he's just gone and got 2 goals against a team that are favoured as champions on the opening day and bullied probably the best centre-back in world football. So can Mitrovic do it in the Premier League? Yes. Very clearly, yes, he can. And the villain, I've said enough already. I think we all know where I'm going to go with this. I think with his comments in the press, how badly his record is starting to look and how wrong he got the opening day, Steven Gerrard's. I'm happy to see my Liverpool bias come here to make Gerrard my villain and the guy who scored 2 goals against him the hero. Fantastic.
Nice one. Well, I think that's a nice way to wrap it up. And do you know what? I think I agree with all your choices. So good choice, mate. That's it for the first pod of the season. Thank you for joining us. And please do hit subscribe and hit a like on the video if you can. If you're listening on Spotify too, follow would be amazing. But just share, please. Let us let everybody know that you watch us and listen to us. That'd be the biggest thing you could do to help us out. But guys, thank you. It's been a pleasure. We squeezed a lot of football into that small amount of time. See you again next time. Cheers, guys.
See you then.
Thanks, guys.